Hangout is live. Bring out your geek. It's live.
Woohoo!
Slightly less enthusiasm than I'm
I,
used to with Bronwyn, but I dig it. It's
yeah,
okay.
it's not. Yeah, I can't pull off a good woohoo. It's
Yeah.
just yeah, but this yeah, I mean it. It's in my heart. It's a heartfelt woohoo. It's just not loud.
Not
But
just not
it's
outwardly woohoo. All right.
yeah.
So we're here to talk Walking Dead comics 11 through 15. So let's dig in and get started.
Alrighty.
Where we left off was um, basically at Herschel's farm.
And
And we open up with basically Rick finding out that there's 14 walkers in the barn.
Herschel's petting zoo.
Yes, one
Special
of which
zombie
is
petting zoo.
yeah, which makes me think of those little machines that you have to like put a quarter in to get like some like chicken feed.
Yep. Just a
they
couple
put it in a
toads.
you walk around like those cake cones and
Yeah.
anyway, all right. And a little bit of divergence here. In the show, Herschel's wife is in the barn. In the comic, it's his son, Sean. And there's a rather heated argument between Rick and Herschel about what these people are. And Rick is sort of like, they're dead, kill them all. And Herschel would like to start up, the zombie version of PETA, pets. See, PETZ.
People for the ethical treatment
Treatment
of
of zombies.
previously living, now reanimated people. Boy, it'd be a long acronym. I mean, he's basically saying, I don't know. I mean, you don't know. Maybe there's a cure. Maybe it wears off. Maybe it's a 24-hour zombie bug. And
Right.
But that was the other thing that was interesting. Also, a departure from the show. I don't believe we have heard or ever will hear the term zombie
Yeah.
in the television Walking Dead, because
No, they call it
somehow
walkers.
walkers, biters, and we'll get all that. But I guess, the idea somewhat is like there's in the television universe, there's never been like a zombie movie or anything like that, and so the word zombie is just not there. Where here, and I believe in the comic, this is the first Herschel refers to them as zombies.
Also, should mention that Herschel has a much fouler mouth in the comic than he does on
At moments. He's both more religious and more sweary. Is both because he'll correct his children on occasion about their language, but yeah, he is a lot more sweary.
Yeah, he was dropping some serious F-bombs, which I had forgotten about, and having watched Herschel on television for so long, was like, oh, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, a little more vinegar in the comic book version of Herschel. He's a little.
Agreed. Also, Alan, whose wife, Donna, was killed in that neighborhood that they thought was so safe. He's a little suicidal.
And mopey and annoying.
Yeah.
So some slack should probably be cut. I mean, he did lose his wife, but he's pouty.
He is pouty.
He's pouty.
And Rick sets up more gun training, and Herschel, much like Lori, doesn't want his kids really too involved with that, and he does sort of allow the older ones to go, but the younger ones, he says that even though they're probably older than Carl, he really doesn't want them carrying guns. And while they're doing the gun practice, Herschel gets really upset that they're ripping bullets through the neighbor's house, even though there's nobody over there, because he's still under the impression that everybody's going to come back and it's going to be a small world after all. And
that would be awesome if the small world ride was zombies.
Wouldn't it?
You're going through it. Arr, arr, different. You say, oh, look, there's the French zombies, and they're mimes again,
Oh my
mime
god.
zombies.
What is with you and mimes, man?
I don't know. I think it's a theme.
Um, and a walker comes out, and Herschel's got everything under control, and sort of grabs it and tries to get it into the barn, which turns into a complete fiasco, as there are 14 others already in there. Um,
So another tied to that distinction from the show, Herschel, TV Herschel, much better safety practices on zombie wrangling. I mean, they got long poles and ropes, and they keep cartoon or comic Herschel
Cartoon.
kind of grabs him by the scruff of the neck, like, come here, you're going in the barn.
He walks him a little bit like a cop would. He's got like one up behind, arm kind of like behind their back, and then he's got like his other hand on their shoulder, and he's sort of marching them in, and the whole time it's going over its shoulder at him. But he completely loses control of that petting zoo, and in the process, and I had a little bit of trouble. I'm fairly certain it's Lacey that dies along with Arnold.
Yes.
I know it was Arnold, but Lacey, she's sort of a generic looking character, so and you don't really see her that much prior to her being killed in the barn. So it took me, like, I had to kind of go back but it's Lacey.
I'm pretty confident she's like first out of the chute, if you will, when the parade of zombies start. And Herschel's already in a bad mood because the day started off with him catching Glenn and Maggie playing cards.
Oh, that's true.
So,
Yeah.
so it's not been a good day for Herschel. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's Lacey because Lacey very minimal in the comic, but like just when they first got there, she's like, "Hey, show them around, Lacey," and she's like, "Fine, whatever. This is our barn." So I didn't mind seeing her go.
Yeah, and that's really all you saw of her until
Yeah,
she gets killed. So I had a little trouble kind of reconstructing that to figure out who that was, but yeah. So he loses, and they end up killing all of them. So Herschel ends up losing 3 kids. Sean, whom we didn't know was yet another child because he's already established he's got 4, 5, 6 kids in the house.
Yeah.
Right?
The twins.
Rachel, Susie, Maggie, Lacey, and Arnold. Maybe it's just 5.
Billy.
Oh, and Billy. So
I think there's a Mitchell. I think it's Billy.
Okay. And
there's a lot of greens.
yeah, and then there's Sean in the barn. So he loses his his son that he was hoping would somehow miraculously overcome rotting corpsey flesh, and he loses Arnold and Lacey, and they've all got to be buried, and it's very sad.
And he tells Rick he has to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we come across the sort of the he does roust Maggie and Glenn, finds them in bed together, and I struggled a little bit with this because they go right from her offering herself up to him because he's lonely and is a little upset that he's lost Carol to I love him. But Daddy, I love him,
Yeah, because it was pretty much the original interplay was, yeah, I'll do you. It was pretty much, it didn't feel like, wow, you've caught my eye.
And it may not have even been that nice of language either.
No, I believe it was a slightly modified version of that, trying to state a certain. We are a non-Negan zone, and so we will say I'll do ya instead of how someone else might say it. That I hadn't totally when I read that part it clanged for me a little bit, but I didn't really connect the dots to go, okay, so let's look at this relationship progression because there's not much.
Yeah. It was a little odd. So apparently love at first something.
Love at first do.
Yeah, love at first coitus or something. I don't know. It was weird. Okay. Dale and Andrea are getting lovey-dovey.
Always creeps me out.
Yep. And the reason that Herschel kicks them out is because Rick offers to have everybody move in.
Yeah.
Well, you got all this space in your house.
Since you're down a lot of family at this point. Which, maybe that was the packaging he should have not,
It
you
goes back to
realize.
those Rick Grimes people skills that are almost non-existent sometimes.
Yes,
Um,
not a good negotiator.
no, no, he's really not. And so that's what sort of kicks Herschel off. He's like, all right, I've had it. Get out.
With a gun to
Um,
his head. I mean, because it was a pretty serious. Herschel's upset.
yeah. And then Lori hauls off on Herschel because Herschel doesn't want them around anymore. And it's just a big, ugly, ugly, messy fight.
Which again, Lori does her Lori magic. So up until that point, I'm like, gee, Herschel, you're a jerk. You really ought to let him stay. Yeah, Rick probably shouldn't have mentioned you have vacancies because your family's dead, but you should let him stay. And then Lori starts lighting into him, and I'm like, yeah, kick him out, Herschel. It's just she's the whole Grimes family's horrible at negotiation.
They are, and yeah, and she does a lot of it's the pregnancy hormones all the time.
A
Um,
lot.
which I'm not gonna lie, I know that's a thing. It's a deal. Mood swings and the whole 9 yards. But let's be fair. She's always been kind of not fun.
No, not
I don't know
not
that we can blame the hormones.
no. I mean, there was even in an unhormoned state, she was unpleasant.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I guess I mean technically speaking, I suppose she could have been.
always hormoned.
Oh yeah, just pregnant from the moment we were introduced to her.
That's true.
Because we don't know how. I guess the distance between her and Shane and Rick.
Apparently, the distance was very minimal at one point with
Yes.
Shane, which is what made him a candidate.
Yeah. So I suppose she could have been pregnant at that whole time and therefore always been hormonal and crappy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she's always got a puss on. I hate to put it that way, but it's just she's always making faces and grumpy and crappy and not unlike the show.
Nope, not at all. Especially because, and here's where the timing of so Shane is dead before they get to the prison in both the television show and the comic,
Right.
but he's dead a lot earlier in the comic.
Hmm.
And that always in the TV show, that moment, because I was like, on Lori, wasn't a big fan, but I didn't like have contempt until one show before she's like, Rick, you need to kill Shane, Rick, you need to kill Shane. And then the next episode, Rick's like, I killed Shane because he tried to kill me, and then she like gives him a look, and she's like, what are you doing? And it's just very frustrating.
She was
Like, what do you want me to
you
do?
need to do something about that, and he's like, no, you need to do something about that. No, you need to do something about that. Okay, did something about that. Oh my God, did you do
You
something
do
about
something
that?
about it.
Shame on you. Yeah, just sorry. Yeah, I do recall that. I
Bad
remember
memories.
thinking she was quite the little hypocrite.
Yes. Hard
Um,
person to please.
so the guns come out, and even little Carl pulls his gun out. Doesn't use it for once.
Yeah, one of the few times Carl's not plugged something.
And because the guns come out, it's just time to go. So everybody packs up, and they leave, Glenn with Maggie because he's in love.
That's right.
Yeah.
Somehow. Miraculously over a couple days. But okay.
In the apocalypse, things happen fast.
Apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Can't imagine
You just
Herschel's
kinda, you
real
just kind of have
thrilled.
to go. Okay. And so they begin. No, they get on the road and they start foraging and hunting, and that is when Rick spies the prison.
And did Rick see it first or did
Yeah.
somebody
I
okay,
I thought. Yeah. Maybe not.
I can't remember now. Anyway, but regardless of whether Rick saw it first,
The end of the issue is him
you
looking
see it.
out at the prison. So that's why I thought that. Hmm.
It's not important. They
Okay.
find the prison. Rick or somebody in his group Rick was either the first or second person to see the prison.
He either saw it first or he was led there, and that's yeah. Okay, so
Next show, Jeans is gonna have a shirt that says Rick saw first. It's like whatever.
Rick decides this is the place to be with its fortifications and fences and whatnot, and so they set about clearing out the prison. Sophie and Carl continue to bond, and Sophie wants Carl to be her boyfriend.
Yes, she does.
And his reply is, "No way, gross," or "You're gross," is what he says. I don't know, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's cute. I like the interplay between those two. This is the more pleasant Carl. It's
More
just
childlike Carl.
yeah, well, and yeah, age-wise, it's so and it, so it's. I think it's a neat little dynamic there. And poor Sophia's she's got a tough road ahead. She's had a tough road already. It doesn't get better probably. So she's
Yeah.
cool. So that's neat. So
And this is
uh,
when they find the guys in the cafeteria.
yeah, but they clean it out.
Yeah.
And it's more, it's a smaller group, including Rick. So the point people, the point guards in the prison cleanout are Rick and Tyrese. So this is the useful Tyrese. This is the interesting, meaningful, useful Tyrese versus what this poor Chad Coleman has to portray in the television series, which is Gandhi Tyrese.
Yeah, he's more the Rick and Tyrese bromance type in the comic.
Yes, indeed, and they kind of clean it up big time there. Um,
Yeah.
there's also a little in the whole time with Sophia and Carl. Chris is babysitting, so Chris, another character, Julie's boyfriend, Chris, who why I don't understand because that appeared to be appearing before the apocalypse, so you can't
Yeah.
use the whole "well, he's my only choice" thing. Seems like a horrible guy and a horrible babysitter and just really whiny and useless.
I'll
Not
agree.
a Chris fan.
Yes. No. Which is, fine, because that doesn't.
That works out pretty well.
Because he's meat, so, Um, so they come across four dudes in the cafeteria, and then it's everybody. We should sit down with these prisoners and eat meatloaf right now,
Right? Yes. What
like
could
you do.
possibly?
They don't even know what they did wrong, and everybody's, breaking bread with the inmates.
It's a pretty scary. I mean, at least two of them are intimidating. I mean, Axel's big
Armed
guy, big
robbery.
biker guy, a lot of tattoos,
Yeah.
and uh, Dexter is also not on the. He's a kind of a big hulking guy, and so
Hmm.
yeah, just like oh okay, well I mean, but they do have food, so I think you want to be friendly.
um, yeah. So there's Axel who's in for armed robbery. There's Andrew who's in for drugs. Dexter who's in for murder, and Thomas who's in for tax fraud. So we're just gonna
Spoiler,
call him
maybe not.
Tax Fraud Thomas is what we're gonna call him.
Yes, that's right.
And at this point, Rick wants to go and get Herschel. He thinks that this is a really good, situation, and it's got to be an improvement over Herschel's situation, being, open to attacks on the farm and things. And so he goes and gets them. And when he shows up, there have been more attacks on the farm, and they're burning bodies and stuff. And um, so
Before we pull them back,
yes,
we need to visit a very important plot point that I wanted to explore further
do
with
tell.
the freezer bathroom. I would like to talk about the freezer bathroom for a little bit.
Okay.
So um, I know it's a choice, but so Dexter, Andrew, Axel, and Thomas have been locked in the cafeteria with all kinds of food for weeks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's weeks, and so apparently I guess I'm not familiar with the prison cafeteria layout. So most of the cafeterias I'm familiar with actually have restrooms nearby,
Right.
but apparently this one doesn't. So you're there for weeks and you're in an enclosed environment. So my question to you is their problem solving was the freezer. Would you have any better suggestions? I don't really out the window. I couldn't
I
tell if
don't
they had
know.
windows. They
Maybe they
probably
have bars in the windows. The only thing I could think of was like a walk-in refrigerator, because I'm sure the freezer probably still had food that they could use. And if they've got a walk-in freezer, they've probably got a walk-in refrigerator as well. Um, and that's, got that nice seal to the door. So yeah, I don't know. I was a little sort of like, but there's food in there.
yeah, that seemed bad from there, but I kept trying to say so. But what would your other because otherwise there would be this cabinet of the most horrific Tupperware ever. If because I was like I guess you've got because you do want to probably try and create some containment, I guess.
Right.
But okay. So I just wanted to visit with you a little bit on the freezer bathroom just to get your thoughts. So yeah, yeah, not a happy place. I don't think
No.
that will not be in the Small World Zombie ride.
um, yeah, no. And we're finding out at this point, Lori thinks she's a little bit bigger than she was at this stage with Carl, which is when it's suggested that perhaps this baby is not Rick's. At which point she gets more grumpy, as per usual, at any discussion pertaining to or with her. Um, and she just shuts that conversation down real quick. And then as it sort of comes to a close, Julie and Chris hook up because that's what we all wanted to see.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, and this is one time when it is not sort of, sort of tastefully shadowed and covered up. These people are stock naked. Um, and apparently they were supposed to do it and then shoot each other. But as you might guess, with our opinion of Chris, he doesn't follow through.
Chris was
Well, he follows through. She doesn't get to get the shot off, so he's still alive.
he's a little quick
Right?
on the trigger. A little quick on the trigger. Maybe yeah, never mind.
On the
But
count of three, one, bang.
yeah, he's like, yeah, that's what I want. I want. Yeah, I just so first, not the guy I do a suicide pact with. Obviously, this is proof of that's a bad idea. But again, just the logic here I'm trying to figure out is I guess they just said we're done. Let's
It was
express our love
very,
to each other and
it was very sort of ridiculously over the top. Romeo and Juliet, let's be together forever in
yeah,
death. Yeah.
really, really, Chris, really, you want to be dead forever with Chris? Think about it.
Right. Well, and Tyrese and Rick come running and find Julie dead, and Chris in a pile on the floor, basically just snotting himself, oh, what happened, sort of thing.
She's too slow.
I know.
It's her fault.
Exactly. At which point, Tyrese just beats the ever living tar out of Chris.
Well, sequencing wise, because Julie
Oh,
comes back.
yes, she does. She comes back and tries to bite him, and it was a really short period of time between when he sat down to cradle her and be like, "Oh, my daughter's dying," to when she just turned. And this is also when the light goes on for Rick that that people are, when they die, they become walkers. And so now he realizes that anybody that they've buried who's been, bitten, it's not just people like the mechanic mime who are going to come back as walkers. It's anybody. And so he realizes he's got to go back and take care of Shane.
Yeah, yeah, and I did. Um, so she comes back, and believe Rick's saying, I can't get the angle, I can't get the angle. He's trying to shoot her, but he can, and Tyrese is probably partially not wanting him to, but knowing he
Yeah.
has to. Oh, Chris, boom, boom. He's on a roll, and so he shoots her, kills her the second time, and then Tyrese beats the crap out of him to death. Then Chris comes back and he beats the crap out of it, and then because I guess it was so horrific, he wouldn't let anybody near the body. Said, "I'll take care of all this,"
Right.
and so at least there's that Tyrese just beat the pulp out of Chris multiple times, so that's
Yeah.
good.
That's it. It made everybody feel nice and fuzzy because nobody liked him anyway.
Yeah. Then we get Rick playing Daryl, getting on his motorcycle and heading back to visit his good buddy Shane.
Yeah, and they also this is also when rabbit season begins for Maggie and Glenn in multiple places all around the prison. Um, and we saw a little bit of that on the TV show, but there was a lot more of it, I think, in the comic. And this is also where we find Rachel and Susie, Herschel's twins, beheaded.
Yeah, because they had of the apparently many locations in the prison that Glenn and Maggie had kind of checked off. The barber shop was, Glenn goes, "Well, I've never had sex in a barber shop," which is probably the first time that sentence has ever been uttered. I can imagine. I hope, and prison barber shop at least, and so they take care of that issue, and cut their hair. And this is
Yes.
where and this is where Glenn comes out, uh, where looking different than the television series Glenn or whatever.
Yeah,
He
he's
basically
bald.
becomes bald, looking like to me a small Yul Brynner, which is not for subsequent Maggie's interest in it's like Maggie
That is
Yul
surprisingly
Brynner
accurate.
really. It's like you can do better than Yul Brynner, Maggie. But so I don't think it's the greatest look for comic Glenn.
Glenn. Yeah.
But then these cute little twins that we didn't really get to know particularly well were like, oh, we want to get a haircut. We want to get a haircut too. And then Herschel goes looking for him later. But so I'm trying to figure out the logistics of that. Was so Glenn and obviously the twins are not with Glenn and Maggie on the first part,
Right.
and then they cut their hair and they come out and the twins want a haircut. They didn't just send those two little kids in there and say, "Yeah, go cut your hair." I mean, I'm assuming Glenn and Maggie went with them, but then maybe at some point they said, "Oh, wait a second, I've never done it in a mop closet," and then they took off. But somehow those kids were left alone in that.
Right.
And I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it was not good news for them to be left alone
Right.
because there's the closing panel of issue 15 is Herschel discovering his his two smallest children with their heads chopped off.
Right. And it's a nice big closing
Two,
shot
two
up
page,
close.
yeah, it's like, but, so it's sad. So we end on a happy note.
I have to say, having watched the show, I really wish that they would have taken Shane to the farm in the comic and had a little more to do with that because he becomes not just angry but more sinister in the show
Yeah,
because he's the one that makes it. He's the one that sort of gets Otis eaten.
yep.
Um, and lies about it. And we start seeing a much darker side, a much more covetous side to Shane in the show. And you see sparks of it in the comic, and he's very angry, and he disagrees with Rick a lot. But it's not. It's definitely sort of jealousy and anger as opposed to some sort of plotting and being a little more, like I said, sinister.
Yeah, that the longer burn in the TV show to get there, kind of in the comic, he was jealous because of his wife.
Right.
He was mad because his plan to say we need to stay right where we're at. Rick saying this plan will get you killed and lose, and Shane felt that made him lose all credibility with the group, and so Laurie made me look bad in front of the group. I hate you and I want to kill you. You know, it moved very rapidly through there where, like you mentioned on the television, it was still, that was there, is the whole Laurie angle, but they had a chance to play that more, and him wanting, making some advances to Laurie more, and that not going well. And then Otis, of course, and and he was the one that opens up the barn in the television show. So yeah, it just gave you
Right.
more time to really kind of more richly develop. Yeah, Rick and Shane are going to have a showdown, and then the whole process of, I don't think Shane intent in the comic. I don't think Shane knew, I'm taking Rick out to take him out
Right.
for sure.
Right.
He's probably open to the idea, but I don't think that was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But in the
Something
television show, he's
happened.
like, "Hey, Rick, I think it's time for us to go." You know, I mean, it was, check, get Rick to come with me. B,
Yeah.
kill Rick. He had a to-do list.
Load gun. Check. Make up circumstances for Rick to follow me. Check.
Rub head. Check. That's what TV Shane does, is he rubs his head when he's about to go crazy.
Yeah. That's his version of Spanish ladies from Jaws.
Yeah.
Because when that song comes out in Jaws, he's about to do something crazy and psycho. Um, but yeah, he did that. I'm not gonna do it because I don't want to mess up my hair.
He didn't have that problem. See, he solved that. I'm gonna want to rub my head. I need. And
Yeah,
he did not look like Yul Brynner.
no,
So it worked for him. But Cartoon Glenn, not good.
it was strange, and yeah, Maggie and her sort of odd, fuzzy, crew cutty pixie thing.
Kind of
It's okay.
alfalfa.
It kind of grows on you after a few frames, but initially it was sort of like it shouldn't even. Neither of them. I mean, the change was drastic enough where you really don't even recognize either of them when they come out of the barber's quarters.
Yep. Yeah. So
So I will say I wish they had kept Shane around a little bit longer, just because I really sort of I like villains. I do. I think they without them we have no heroes really when it comes to entertainment. Obviously, in day-to-day life, there's lots of heroes that do all kinds of things, and you know, policemen and firemen and doctors and nurses, and we have all kinds of day-to-day life heroes. But in entertainment-wise, you need a villain, and I really enjoyed him in the show. He was just sort of delicious to hate. Just sort of, he was so dark and fun to watch him just sort of unravel.
so
Mhm.
I'm not challenging what you say, Gene. But so I would provide. I don't know what I'm providing here, but I think you might want to revise that to, you like dreamy villains, because 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 Governor and Shane, I think, fall into your. But what I believe is still the most outstanding villain of Walking Dead and a true hero, Merle. uh, you you have less passion about.
I don't necessarily see Merle always as a villain. I see him as a very self-serving character that has occasional short bursts of humanity, um, and his bigotry, I think, is really what sort of does that for me.
Yeah.
Really,
Okay.
really
So that,
turns that off for me. I have very little tolerance for that,
that's
and so while he is a villain, I still don't see him as being. He's sort of like a dark anti-hero to me more than because at the end he still sort of comes through. He still does something decent at the end, Merle.
heroic.
Um,
Heroic, I'd
yeah,
say.
yeah,
Truly.
and he has and he does care for Daryl. He's not without feelings, and he's not whereas while Shane does care about Lori and Carl, he's a little more obsessed and crazy about it. So do you see kind of my logic
Yeah,
in that? I
actually,
don't know. It's
I totally get where you're coming from, and particularly kind of come into, obviously, uh, um, uh, Merle's racism traits. not a thing. But I will say, and this is not a defense of racism, but I will say that I think he, outside of his brother, I mean, he kind of held any human being in contempt, and he would apply the most demeaning language. But I don't know. He was also probably raised. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good point. But he did have a really cool kind of steampunk bayonet arm thing going at the end.
He did.
Pretty cool.
He did.
And I did like the Dixon brothers together was awesome. I loved when it was, the dynamic duo out there.
I even enjoyed the bits where Daryl was hallucinating about seeing Merle. I like that stuff too. I thought that was
cool.
And Merle wasn't particularly nice to him then either. But I don't. I guess he is a villain. It didn't occur to me in quite the same way.
I get you.
So, is there anything, comparatively speaking, that you wish they had done different on one side or the other, TV to comic?
So I'm with you on extending Shane a little bit further would have been good. And this is, I don't know if this is, and we got to just, there's that given of you don't have any Dixon related thread, it's not there in the comic.
Right.
I just think it's a couple of things we hit on here. The one thing that I would have been kind of nice, and they had more opportunity to do it, maybe ad nauseum in the television show, is a little more time to let things play out. So it's the whole Maggie, hey Glenn, sure, if you're looking for somebody, I'm here, to I love him, to not really clear how those twins end up in the barber shop beyond, hey, we want a haircut, and then boom. So it's just taking a little more time to fill it. I mean, they don't have to kind of draw me a map to say, well, they walked here and then they got a drink or whatever, but give me at least a couple footholds where it's just every once in a while there's kind of a big jump of some things. But they happen here and there. It's still a very engaging storyline. It's still all very, very interesting. So I think beyond the idea, I just would echo your sentiments that I think carrying Shane longer would be good. And I would have been really open if they had to give somebody up. That Comic Carol, Comic Carol for me. Yeah, anytime. If you just want to take Comic Carol, which I make a big difference between TV Carol and Comic Carol, because Comic Carol, I would have. You needed to get rid of somebody, keep Shane, get rid of Carol. But
yeah, she's not nearly as cool.
Not even close.
Yeah, not even remotely close.
No.
So
there'll be future episodes where we can brizz a little further on this. So
yeah, I mean, because in the show she's actually one of my favorite characters, but in the comic, no. And there's a couple of things coming up where things get sort of awkward and weird with her. Excuse me. And I just like, why Carol? No.
Did you say that to yourself first? But we will talk about that in future episodes.
Yes, we will. So that was issues 11 to 15.
And the cover for 13, if you're looking at the comics, my favorite one out of this series, because this was the one where, and I like these, I mean, because it's like each of the covers is like they kind of give a teeny, and it's a challenge. How do you give a teeny bit of hint of the story, but not like give away a major plot point? And I think they always do a really good job.
Right.
But 13 was when they actually it's the first kind of full prison episode, and they've got, I think, Rick and Tyrese coming into a door, and there's a zombie prisoner coming out, and it's a Swiss cheese zombie prisoner. You can see the light coming through it in a lot of different places. They were just a really cool looking cover. Yeah,
the actual cover is shot like over the zombie's shoulder at Rick and Tyrese, so you get this fantastic outline of death incarnate coming for them. And
I'm little portholes.
Sure, yeah, Rick's still wearing a blanket.
Well, but I think he got rid of his T-shirt.
He did, thank God. Yeah, they're indoors, so he doesn't have to cover his head with the T-shirt tag thing. Drive me bonkers. Okay, and on that note, so our next episode we are going to be talking 16 to 20. Okay. Join us then. This has been Bring Out Your Geek, talking Walking Dead comics with Jeans and Kelly.
Thanks, everybody.